Consumerism, the protection or promotion of the interests of consumers. Often, the preoccupation of society with the acquisition of consumer goods.
What does consumerism look like at Boston College? The products we buy and the food we eat are two tangible examples of consumerism at BC. While these are not the only examples of consumerism on campus, clothing and food are items that are basic consumption necessities in our lives.
But what happens when we consume more than we should? Overconsumption is the action of consuming something to excess. We are all guilty of overconsumption to some extent. Adequately predicting the exact amount of food and clothing we need is practically impossible. But what happens when we overconsume? Overconsumption has three basic but serious consequences: wasted resources, environmental degradation, and decline in human health. The latter two may not be obvious right now, but we'll come back to them later.
Let's do an experiment about consumption at Boston College. It involves one simple question. How much food do you perceive that you waste per week at BC? We polled students at Boston College, and the average response to this question was $11.21. At first glance, that does not seem too bad. $11.21 equates to something like a pepperoni pizza, a tasteful burger, or a large appetizer, and only one of those per week.
But that's only what the students perceived they waste per week. The actual figures are a little bit different. Over the past few weeks, we have recorded the amount of food that Boston College students throw away at Lower Dining Hall during different times of the day and tabulated a total price tag for the amount of food thrown away. Dividing that calculation by the number of students with meal plans, we found that the average student will waste approximately $26.95 in a given week at Boston College. This number doesn't seem too high either. That figure equates to around 2.5 pepperoni pizzas, burgers, or large appetizers per week.
But what happens when you multiply that figure by the 7,100 students who have full or flex meal plans at Boston College? The result, a staggering $191,000 wasted per week. Keep in mind, this figure is just representative of the amount of food thrown away in the dining halls. How much more do you think that figure would be if you considered the leftover food in your trash can in your dorm?
What does $191,000 equate to? If you were at a 5-star restaurant in New York, you could buy 546 top-of-the-line steaks, all for yourself. You could also buy almost 15,000 24-packs of Coke. You could buy over 1 million individual servings of ramen noodles. How does it feel knowing that at only one college campus, over 1 million potential servings of food are thrown away in 1 week? Even more shocking is the fact that Boston College isn't even that bad in comparison to the rest of the country. According to one recent study, the raw percentage of food that gets produced but doesn't even get eaten in this country is as much as 40%.
Why do you think we throw away so much food, oftentimes without even thinking we're contributing to a $191,000 waste cycle? To try to answer this question, let's take a look at consumption in terms of the products that BC students buy. We all know the rumors out there. If you look around at any given moment, you're likely to find an abundance of Macs, J. Crew sweaters, Vineyard Vines, and Sperry's. Fitting into the BC culture is very important, according to a study by former student Shelby Garber in 2013. Let's buy into the notion that a typical student will make an earnest attempt to fit the BC stereotype. The stereotypical BC student's daily outfit could be worth as much as $250.
However, according to our research, the average BC student only makes $40 per week, and a surprising number of respondents reported that they do not earn money at all during the school year. Clearly then, we see that a typical BC student may not be paying for his or her luxury goods completely with the money out of his or her pocket.
Prior studies and our own data suggest that BC students fit within a typical category of semi-autonomous adults who do not need to pay for all of their expenses themselves. Students do not feel the full economic effects of their consumption when purchasing items. Thus, overconsumption naturally follows. Overconsumption of goods at BC, such as the food we eat and the clothes we buy, is perpetuated by the epidemic of swiping arbitrary cards and failing to think of the economic consequences.
In addition to wasting resources, what are some other effects of overconsumption? We've talked about food and clothing so far, but another consumption good is energy. Overconsuming energy can degrade the earth, as we've proven with studies on global warming due to our carbon emissions.
Moreover, as many of us overconsume, others of us are left with little to nothing. Human health as a whole suffers when everyone does not have the adequate resources needed to live a healthy life.
According to one recent study, 925 million people suffer from chronic hunger worldwide, due in no small part to our own overconsumption. Overconsumption is prevalent throughout our society, but as Boston College students, we especially have a responsibility to stop rapid overconsumption and to protect the people who continuously suffer as a result.
We all think about the images of starving children and families throughout the world, but how much does this image actually apply to our own lives? Reducing food losses in this country by just 15% will be enough to feed more than 25 million people.
Throughout the next week, see how much food you can save. It's a small task that could potentially save millions of lives.